Today we have Ben Lee, who is an award-winning singer, songwriter, producer, essential oils educator, entrepreneur, and professional adventurer. In everything that he does, he is a passionate believer in infinite possibility inherent in the human mind and heart. Over the last 15 years, Ben's music has become increasingly focused on his spiritual path and the awakening of consciousness. He has used the pop song format to experiment and to continually find new ways to carry spiritual messages into mainstream culture through songs. More recently, he has been invited to speak on issues of creativity and spirituality and has begun to share his message of awakening, inner work, and non-conformity in this medium. He has offered workshops and given talks on subjects such as how to die and other aspects of being an artist, what would a new artistic culture look like, and songwriting towards virtue. He is such a super cool human being. You are surely going to enjoy this genius and creative mindset, so enjoy. So today we have Ben Lee. Welcome to Radical Shifts. How are you today? Or evening, great. I should be saying.
That's okay. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Like I said, I think you're going to add a bit of spice to the something because of what you do. And so for our viewers, let's unpack Ben Lee a little bit and tell us a little bit about your life and what does your story say?
Well, I suppose the central through line to everything I've done has been making music. I was discovered, whatever that means. My journey started professionally with music when I was about 14 years old. So I was in year 8 and I basically became a professional underground sort of punk rock musician. And all these doors started opening and was traveling around the world, but continuing with school. And it's been a fascinating journey with music, particularly because I think the reason that I first got any attention that I got was to do with people looked at him and were like, this is so weird. What is this kid doing? So it wasn't that I was prodigal and uniquely talented in some technical way, but I had a unique vision and a sense of individuality. And I think that I've continued to allow that to unfold throughout my career. And in a way, the specifics of the projects or the decisions that I've made have not been as important as the intention with which they're made. And the intention has always been to sort of expand my own sense of what's possible and hopefully expand my audience's sense of what's possible. So all this very abstract way of describing, I've made lots of records, lots of collaborations, I've produced other artists, and my life's gotten more and more dynamic the last decade with different kinds of writing projects and speaking engagements, and we have an essential oils business and educating about natural health and wellness. And all of it, to me, feels very cohesive in that it's all about this kind of like getting a sense that there's more possible than what we first began with. But, it's an interesting life.
I'm really curious. What was that vision? Do you recall what the vision was back then?
Well, I remember very specifically when I was at my first kind of gig at Selena's at the Coogee Bay Hotel. I was 14. We were opening for this band called Sonic Youth, who were a very influential New York sort of noise band. And we walked out on stage and the guitars were bigger than us. And we were a terrible band. My band was called Noise Addict. We were, we couldn't really play, but we had amazing chutzpah and attitude and just, attitude. And I looked at the audience and I saw this perplexed, amused sense of wonder in the audience's eyes. And I felt it too. What's happening? What is this? And it's almost like my whole career since that moment has just been it's kind of a loop to just recreate that moment over and over. I love the idea of the unexpected. And I love the idea of creating these little, the word shock is, we associate it with like Marilyn Manson and Alice Cooper and art that's shocking. But there's another type of shock, like almost like a psychological shock, when someone drops in and shows up in a way that you're not expecting them to. Like, you know, when you're going through the hustle and bustle of life and someone's like, hi, hey, how are you? No, really, how are you? And we're sort of shocked into like, oh my God, I'm a human being. Oh, whoa, okay, here's a human being wanting to connect with me. For me, those moments are the fuel of everything.
Oh, wow, that's so true. And so was that the point, your pivot point, your radical shift in your life, that was that turning point for you when you were standing there looking at it? Because as you were saying it, I could almost feel it. I had goosebumps. So it's like
that
that.
moment of realization. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Delay.
No.
It was a moment of realization because obviously I'd already had the intention, was in motion. We'd rehearsed, we had demo tapes. But it was a moment of, I wouldn't say it was a pivot point. There were moments before that I had to make big decisions, and moments after. But that was a moment where something crystallized as possible. So it's kind of like there are these moments we make these decisions, but then there are moments where we see that we're not crazy, that it's possible, that we might not be there yet, but it's possible to get there. Those moments can be very reinforcing.
Okay, and so from what I understand, you're recreating these moments over and over again.
Well, it just sort of like, I loved that moment. And I probably loved it before that. I probably loved it in other ways. I mean, I always loved, I just loved the sense of wonder that art can put you into. I remember looking at my sisters had Fleetwood Mac Rumours and Roxy Music Avalon, and I never played the vinyl. I was a little kid, but I looked at the album covers and was like, this is weird. What is this? Because they're really weird album covers. And I liked that music and art and the sharing of ideas could be a portal into ways of seeing life that we might not have been open to understanding or experiencing before. So that was already kind of going, but realizing I can do this. This is for me. I like this. I like standing there and facilitating those types of moments.
I know. I actually recall some time ago listening to a podcast, and it was a musician. He was just saying that when you are into that realm of playing music, creating music, it does almost heightens your senses, your listening, your everything about you to that. It's almost like a spiritual awakening is the way that he described it. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so deeply intimate, the relationship to music, that sometimes when I hear other people talking about it, I can't believe it. Like, oh my gosh, you have that experience too? Because, you know, as Shakespeare said, trust not the man that hath no music in his soul. Music it's the facilitator of an exchange of emotion, of, just the vibration. It's incredible. So there's something about, we all love music. I mean, I don't even believe it when people say they don't like music or they don't listen to music. It's just they've forgotten. There's something about music that is so primal, and it's so connected to dreaming, and it's like this blank canvas that we can project all of these experiences onto. And it becomes this amazing just way of bypassing the intellect and getting straight to the heart and to the unconscious and subconscious mind. And music can really be powerful in that way.
Oh, it is. It is. To me, it's all about emotion. And I think that sometimes I remember songs that sometimes where I've had significant emotional events take place, and I can relate it back to a song. So it's almost like an imprint of that particular song from, many, many years ago.
Well, it's funny how a lot of like my family's actually quite cerebral in a sense. Like the conversations growing up were very intellectual and academic. But it's been interesting in my life. I've been very drawn to sound, to smell, to other senses that, again, are portals to places beyond the intellect. And if you can then bring intellectual tools to understanding the experiences that you're having, and I'm not one of these people that thinks the mind is nothing, all heart. Like, the mind is incredible. But to bring it into partnership with information from these other senses double its power.
Oh, absolutely. You're tapping into different vibrations. Absolutely. And there are different vibrations. So there's a statement here. Once you've seen the world through different eyes, you can never go back. Talk us through what you meant with that statement.
I don't know if I said it. I trust you if you said it.
I did some research.
Well, I come from underground music where you wanted to blow people's minds. And that wasn't always, like I said, with technical virtuosity. It was often with volume. It was with the sheer violence and aggression of the performance, which is something that I no longer find that I'm not that connected to. When you're younger, often that type of way of blowing your own mind is more meaningful. But I have always believed and continue to believe that we are capable of getting glimpses into realities that are beyond our limited scope of vision. And music's a part of that. That's why I've found it very fascinating, the way psychedelics work with the human mind, and even just in conversation. I mean, I think we as humans are capable of blowing each other's minds, and that's still my favorite thing to experience, someone blowing my mind. Because it's tricky, I heard someone say once that basically a moment of enlightenment, a peak experience, having your mind blown, it's a bit like you're walking through the dark and suddenly there's a flash of lightning and you can see the entire horizon. You see all the trees and everything, but then it goes dark again. And it's not like you retain it at a conscious level. Like, all of us have had peak experiences, and we often have the delusion, I'm never going to go back to the way I was. Life can never be the same. And in a way that's naive, but in a way it's true, because I think it's creating almost like muscle memory for experiences later on that will build on the, hey, my love. My daughter's coming in. Experiences that will almost prepare us to stabilize at a level of awareness, So, for instance, we might get, as parents, right? We might get the experience of a sudden awakening of compassion because we realize the vulnerability and the innocence that we're custodians of. But then we go into our jobs or our interactions with each other and we lose that and we go back to our hardened self. Yet something's growing inside us, and each time we have that flash, it gets stronger. And I do believe in my own life that there have been experiences of expanded consciousness that have taken multiple exposures in order to stabilize. But in a way, once it begins, it begins. And once you see, you see this in movies, they play this out very well. When there's a crisis looming, it begins with tiny hints. There's foreshadowing. We feel it, that it carries, say you have a movie dealing with like the civil rights movement, and you see in the white characters tiny inklings of guilt or shame about their behavior that are leading to a larger sociological change, So it's complicated, right? Why we change and the process we change in. But I do believe that once you get that first glimpse, it's almost like the death sentence has been written on your old way of seeing. It's just, we can't say exactly how long it's going to take, but it is going to fall apart.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, I always look at, when you talk about enlightenment, ascension, or spiritual awakening, it is that I always say that, there was once upon a time, I think I was walking through life with my eyes closed, but now my eyes are opened because I see it in such a different, I guess, my perceptions and my reality to life today are very, very different. And I guess I do have a question for you. Like, how do you think our perceptions shape our reality? And what is the difference between perception and reality?
Well, I don't have an answer to that. I can only speak from my own experience.
Of course.
That when my perception is essentially positive, for lack of a better word, it appears I draw good things towards me. And I look at that all the work I do is, any success I've had is, it's not like a corporate job where you can just work your way up the ladder. It has to do with people wanting to be in your energy. That's what it is to be a performer and to be an artist. And I look at it in a very pragmatic way. I think I've gotten jobs because I'm kind of positive to hang out with. I'm sort of a positive influence. Like, I try and add value. There are areas where I'm technically not as skilled. When I got up on that first stage at 14, I had nowhere near as much skill as I had positive mindset. So in a very pragmatic way, if I'm going to choose between a few people to give a job to, I'm going to choose the one that I feel good about myself around. So it just seems really simple to me, the way that our perception affects our reality. And of course, then there's the other level of the things, not the new things that we attract, but that we're able to see with gratitude the positive things that are already there. So our lives also appear more miraculous when we're in gratitude. And when we're in cynicism, they appear despairing and depressing.
So true. I totally agree with that. I was actually just having a conversation with another lady today exactly in regards to gratitude. When you are grateful for your lessons, because I always, every day I love journaling, and I always look at what did I learn from today, and I'm always grateful for the lesson. I think that it comes from a place of the heart as well, and it's not from a place of other emotions. And I think that when you're grateful with what you have, for your family, your business, your whatever that may be, your gift, because I see that you're very much using your gift, and that's how you're tapping into the world and attracting this reality into your world, because you're vibrating at that high level. You're tapping into, those other vibrations we were talking about, hence why you do what you do. But I think that for me, gratitude is something I practice daily. And since I've been doing that, I find that my life is so much more abundant than me trying to manifest or create something, because I come from a place of almost desperation, if that makes sense, which is what you're talking about.
Well, I've had a lot of experiences like that in my sort of internal life, where I've learned the difference between, for lack of a better word, prayer, what it means to pray from a place of please help me, and what it means to pray from a place of thank you. Because that ultimately, on a cosmic level, I don't mean on a day-to-day level, that your needs will be met at a cosmic level, So gratitude for that is kind of where it begins and ends, I think. And when we come with desperation, you can look at this at an interpersonal level all the time, like dating. I mean, desperation does not get you anywhere. The ability to walk away gives you negotiating power. And the ability to walk away comes entirely from a self-belief that your needs will be met. If it's not here, it'll be met somewhere else. So I think business is an amazing sort of game, amazing play field to see these dynamics at work. And you realize that the way our beliefs about who we are and the type of world we're in affect the types of exchanges, interactions, and success or failure that we have.
So true. With that, I do have, as I'm talking about, as you're talking about the whole business side of things, and I see this all the time, we, as humans, we're always wanting more money, a bigger house, a better job, more clients, whatever that may be. And because we're so focused on the wanting piece, we become really reactive. And our doing piece is like we're constantly, chasing our tail and being reactive. And then how we are feeling and being is exhausted, tired, anxious. But what about what if we were to reverse engineer that and actually start being the very thing we want to be? So it's being happy. So because when we're talking about setting goals for yourself, most of the time it's either I want happiness or freedom. And if you are just being in that present moment, being happy, then you're actually doing the things that you love to do and to have exactly what you want to have in the end. So it is interesting. We get it, I think as humans, we get it back the front. We focus on the wrong things almost.
Yeah, I think also in terms of growth, we think the reason that we want to grow is because we want to reach a certain destination. So, I'm working hard on my career because I want to reach $300,000 a year income, whatever someone's story is. And they then have made a connection between this impulse to grow and a specific goal. Whereas the reality is everything in nature seeks growth all the time. And it's not for a specific goal. When a plant is growing towards the light, it doesn't have some belief, yeah, eventually I'm going to get to that light and then we'll stop and we'll be, I've achieved my dreams. So there's a type of peace I think we can have with our yearning for the light, with our yearning for growth, in that it's its own reward. We're not growing to get somewhere. We're growing because stretching feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like you surrender to the light. I think sometimes it's almost like you just have this faith and understanding it will just take place.
Yeah, well, it's like the human spirit is indomitable. And if you decide you're going in that direction, like a plant, again, the analogy, barring some, someone coming and chopping you down physically, or, you basically are going to get there sooner or later. Like plants keep growing. Yeah. They get illnesses, but I think it's a surrender. It's an interesting one because it's surrender into the need for action. That it's entirely natural to yearn and to work hard and to achieve and to grow and thrive. Like, it's the most natural thing in the world. And one of the things that I think is sad about our society is I think because we've lost touch with that, we've kind of demonized and it's become this shadow thing. And you end up with businesses that want growth over concern for environmental impact or ethical business or taking care of their employees. Or like ultimately we should look at growth as about creating healthier and healthier environments for dynamic expansion that's good for everybody. Like the bigger we get, the better we get, and the more good we're doing, and the healthier we get, essentially.
That's really important too. And I think there is not enough of that. I mean, we'd always talk about, and especially these days because there's so many disruptions in our life, whether it's social media, you name it. I think we don't have that time. We don't give ourselves the time to actually stop and reflect and think about those kind of things. It's just very, very fast paced.
Well, I really like that book, that Simon Sinek book, Start With Why, that really argues in favor of having those conversations from the very beginning of any endeavor. And I think that's whether it's you're going to have kids or you're starting a new business or you've got a hobby, like being tapped into your real motivation for it beyond the sort of surface goals you want to achieve or the surface problems you're trying to fix. Like, and for me, a lot of that is being tapped into the innate primal human desire to experience more.
Absolutely. That, to me, the why is the unconscious driver. It's the purpose, and we always talk about finding our purpose or finding our true meaning in life. And it doesn't matter whether you apply it personally or business, but the why piece is so important. And quite often we know what we want to do, how do we want to do it. We don't get into the why. And then we wonder why we get lost along the way. And so I think that, quite often you hear people bantering around about, I want to find my purpose. What is my purpose in life? And what are your thoughts around finding your purpose in life or the meaning in life? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, it's this sense of possibility. I always come back to, like, I like the game. I like the game of life. You know, I'm not someone who has a specific end goal, but I intend to play with a type of passion and dynamism and commitment and enjoyment, to experience it completely ethically in a way that I can feel good about my behavior in it. I mean, the way that we play, the measure of ourselves and our ethics can really be seen in our behavior within the game. You know, when did we get distracted? When did we sell out? When did we stay firm and focus on our principles? You know, all these things we can ask ourselves as we're playing with a light touch, you know, so that we can begin to like understand the areas where it's like the human body, like we're trying to get healthy. We're looking, where are there blocks? Which muscles are compensating for others? Which are like, we want to become holistically healthy. And so for me, the why is really connected to full experience. And I don't mean that sometimes that type of language is almost taken to mean like hedonism or something, you know, like, oh, I just want to experience everything. It's not that at all. I want to experience my choices and the impact of the power of my choices to their maximum. You know, I don't want to live this life unconsciously. I want to live it as a participant.
I love that. So you live your life more consciously. I'm really curious. You just mentioned you actually don't have an end goal. So are you saying you don't have a vision or you don't have a goal? You just really thrive on the journey and just go with the flow of life and see where it takes you?
There are goals along the way. Like if I start making an album, the goal is to finish the album, you know. But with art, it's different because when you look back at careers, the kind of careers that I admire, like say like Leonard Cohen, right, who died last year, I think. When you look back at his career, it's not a flawless commercial enterprise or even a flawless artistic enterprise. It was it had experiments, it had whims, it had, but overall the through line was that guy experienced being Leonard Cohen and he expressed it. Like my goal is to live this thing out and to do it in a way that, you know, it's interesting the way life unfolds. I mean, I was talking to my friend today and I said, you know, I'm already at the point where you go, what's the connective tissue between Fugazi and Kylie Minogue? It could only be Ben Lee. Like there aren't many artists that have worked in the variety of fields that I've touched, and that's only continuing. And all of that is me testing the limits of what this thing is. What can it do? I mean, it's literally like you're born and you're given a car, and my goal is to figure out what it can do and use it for its best stuff. And that might be moment to moment. That might be helping someone who needs help in a given moment, you know. But I can't say I'm not just using it to drive from here to there. I'm using it to experiment with what it is.
Yeah, and you do that very well, may I say. I think you're very, very creative and very much the way that you think is, I always say, thinking outside of the box. So I'm really curious, how does that creativity, how do you tap into that creativity? Because you're talking about, you know, this is your vehicle and it's about how you drive that vehicle and you're very, very creative. So how do you tap into those, you know, when do those creative ideas come to you? Is it in the shower, when you're driving?
Well, I mean, it's almost like the idea, the word creative ideas compartmentalizes them as if every idea we're not having is creative. I mean, when you pick what you're having for dinner and you go to the grocery store, you're making creative decisions. So I don't think they're like special thoughts. And I think there's a bit of mythology around artists that make them like, oh, artists have those special thoughts, you know, like I hear a song or, you know, maybe that happens, but I make things, you know, my work is very pragmatic in that sense. I make stuff. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. I have an idea It might come from a conversation. It might come in a dream. It might come as I'm walking the dog. And if it sticks with me, I try and make it. And I see if it still holds any of that feeling. Now, it often doesn't. Often you make the thing and it didn't touch the space that you touched in your mind. But that's part of being human too, that we have transcendent vision, and the execution in the material world is often not as exquisite as our imaginations can be. But I don't really have an answer of how does it work because I don't understand it. But I don't see my life as being much more creative than anyone else's. I just see I've chosen to play. Like, kids are so creative when they play. I mean, when you see kids just playing dolls, or it's just pure creativity, and they're buying in. They're like, I'm in this game. Let's play. And that's all I'm doing. It's the same thing.
It's so true. I think it's, and you're right. It's a perception that people, musician, artists are more creative because they do something with it. And it's true. It's everyone's creative. We've got a right side of our brain that we can tap into. It's just about what we do with it. And I guess, I get when you're talking about ideas, and they do come to you, I in conversation or walking your dog. But what's been your best idea that you've ever had?
I think marrying my wife was a good one. That's definitely, out of single decisions, that might be the one that will ultimately bring the biggest return on investment as a human being. It's been a refinement of ideas. I think one of them was an idea that grew and grew over the course of my career and experimentation has been that any success or recognition I will achieve, it will be by being true to myself. I'm not, and now that came through process of elimination because I tried to pander and it didn't work. It didn't get me the results I wanted. So I'm not an idiot. Like a lot of it is just kind of being clever and going like, well, that didn't work. Not going to do that again. Don't touch the fire twice. My strength is not in being an imitator. I just don't have that. I see a lot of people that have that chameleon type thing, and they're good at it. They can see a path and they can copy it and be successful with it. That's not my strength. So the theory here has been that the more unique and idiosyncratic my vision of my life becomes, the better my chances for success.
Because
yeah.
Yeah, no, because I totally agree. I mean, we're all authentic. We all have our own identity. We have our own gift, and it's about what we do with that gift in our life. I agree. There's too many people, I think, that seek external themselves to find themselves, if that makes sense, where it's really the opposite, isn't it? It's going deep, doing the deep work, going inside, internalizing things, and that's where you find your ideas, your gifts, your talents, and so forth.
Yeah, and also it's kind of doing what's fun to you.
Mm.
Like Ben Folds, this musician I played with a lot, like he said, follow your bliss always sounded a bit dramatic to him. He liked follow your interest.
Mm.
Follow what you're interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a great podcast I like, How I Built This. It's an NPR podcast. It's about entrepreneurs and stuff. They're always just following an idea that was interesting to them.
Yeah.
And it's something that people skip when they go, I'm looking for $1 million idea. I'm looking for $1 million idea. Just think about your life. Follow something you're interested in and you have a much better chance of success. And with businesses, it's interesting because we see this a lot now that the world has become so much more niche, through the internet, that companies trying to be everything to everyone are not nearly as interesting as companies trying to be absolutely unique and like service at a very specific level a community. Because then there's loyalty and there's understanding and there's, a real compatibility. So I think in general, like that journey of becoming who you are is the greatest journey that a human being can take.
But that's not, it's interesting that you say that, because it is true. It's about what you are interested in. But nowadays, quite often you hear entrepreneurs speak about find out what your tribe wants and create that. And then you'll speak to other entrepreneurs, and even as an astrologist. Not that long ago, I spoke to a Vedic astrologist. She was saying exactly what you were saying. Tap into your interests. Tap into the things that you love to do, and they will come.
Yeah, and also, like, who's in your tribe? You are.
Yeah.
You know, like, if you find out what your tribe wants, that should include you.
Yeah.
Like, you, and if something, you know, if you really feel, and obviously there's compromise, and like, I'm not someone who's like believes all art should be just indulgent, interpretive dance where we feel good rolling around on the floor. There's communication and there's compromise. But 100%, if it feels wrong to you, don't go down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. And I think that, you know, I remember even going through building an avatar for business, and I couldn't build a fake one. It was all relatable to me. And I had to build two separate avatars, but they were aspects of different, you know, I believe we all have multi-selves. And I had to tap into some of those multi-selves to be able to identify my avatar, which is, once again, it was all internalized.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So do you believe in the mindset of needing nothing attracts everything?
It's, you know, I mean, everything is its opposite's also true. I think what's powerful about that is what I was sharing about the power of negotiation. If you can walk away, you are more powerful.
Mm.
But there is also the vulnerability of desire. And when someone can speak their truth, including what they want, and can stand there without, in like a non-aggressive way, but can actually be like, I want this. I want this job. I want to make this project happen. I want this collaboration. I want this marriage. The virtue of the human ability to fight for what it believes in is also incredibly attractive. So I think they're both, these are all like, this is what I said again about having a balanced body and being healthy. Sorry, I keep knocking that cymbal. Is that we want to have all these dynamics within us. And we want to have all of these tools and know when to pull them each out. You know, there's that moment when you're at a dead end. He's just not that into you, you know, that kind of moment when your ability to tap into that part of you that doesn't need it that badly. That's crucial. And then there's other times when you got to stand there and you got to fight. So I don't believe in like a one-size-fits-all approach to life. I think that knowing how to dance is really important.
I love that, knowing how to dance. And that takes also a lot of courage to be vulnerable, because I remember once upon a time I used to think is vulnerability as a sign of weakness. If I stand there in my truth and say, hey, I love you, I care for you, I'm being vulnerable, but I'm also being, you know, it was to me a sense of weakness. Whereas now I see very much vulnerability as a sign of strength, to be able to stand in your truth, and regardless of what the outcome is and the repercussions or the consequences of being vulnerable.
Yeah. Think about yourself.
Yeah. So what do you believe is one or are some keys to successful change?
It's funny. I studied Taoism when I was 18 years old for a few years, and I fell in love with change. Actually, I can even go back before that. Here's Goldie again. Hi, my love. When I studied the romantic, I don't know, soon after dinner. When I studied the romantic poets in high school, Keats and Blake, and I fell in love with their love for change. You know, these were not poets who sought a stagnant experience. They sought a dynamic experience. And that really affected me. I remember I was 17 years old, probably studying that stuff, and I was like, I get this. I get the idea that we're not looking for something to put in a box. We're looking for something that moves. We're looking to dance, you know? And I think that mindset where we don't demonize change, but we see it as something gorgeous. You know, that can be a very good tool. Like, I've talked to a lot of people in the music industry who have not been able to adapt as technology's changed, as the industry's changed, styles changed. And I've always carried myself with a very light touch. I was like, yeah, doing this, doing that. I'm going to just keep moving. And it's because I love change. So I think that's the big one.
Not everyone loves change, though, and I think it's almost like we are creatures of habit, and almost our default position is to remain, or to remain something that's familiar to us or similar to our environment. I'm also one of those people that love change. I love variety, but I know that, for example, not everyone loves change. So, what would be something that you would help bring to light for those that have, stuck with change or fear change, or anything like that? What would be something that you would say to them?
Well, when we think about falling in love, there's organic love where you just see someone, you fall in love. But there's also falling in love can be cultivated, and it can sometimes take work. And the decision to fall in love predates falling in love, usually. You know what I mean? Usually we let ourselves fall in love. So begin there. Imagine a scenario where it's possible, where change becomes your friend. And it's something that you love about life, even though that's something maybe now seems crazy. Just let yourself fall in love. Watch the changes, build trust, build a sense that this universe might not be hostile to you personally. It might just be changing, because that's nature. But it's not personal.
Yeah.
And I think if we cultivate it, we can begin to love it. Because we don't have a choice. Look, it changes. Like, this universe changes. So I think it's one of those things where, like, do you want to go with it or you want to go against it?
Yeah, so you're talking about surrendering to the possibilities, surrendering, not having our walls up, and just allow it to happen and take shape.
Yeah, but I'm talking about something else too. I'm talking about passion.
Mm.
Like, surrender can almost sometimes feel passive. I'm talking about passion and devotion. The fact that life, in all of its mystery and all of its, like, violent disruption to our plans, we can actually learn to fall in love with it. And be like, oh my gosh, what's it going to do next? Whoa. What is it going to do? I cannot wait to see how this next chapter goes. Because I just got to the end of this chapter and it's been crazy. What's going to happen next? Wake up with that attitude and the day becomes fun.
I like that. I really love. For me, it's one of those things that I'm always very conscious about what I feed my mind. I'm not into, so for example, I don't watch the news, I don't read the news, I don't listen to the news. I'm very conscious about living my own little bubble of possibilities. And I don't think we do have enough fun, but I love that curiosity mindset of having fun. What's going to happen next? That sense of curiosity brings lightness to it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, this might sound crazy, but, even when you're, like, running low on money, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see how this problem is solved. Like, because it's going to get solved, because that's generally what happens with nature. Like, cycles happen and things get cleansed and we move into new areas. And isn't it exciting to see what happens? And what you find, coming back to where our conversation started, that when you have that energy, you actually attract opportunity.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Having a fun outlook on this wild, wild adventure is the best advice I could offer.
I love that. And it is an adventure. Absolutely, it's an adventure. And I think it's in everything that happens in life, it's the meaning we give it. And you could actually give it a meaning of having fun with it. And it will change the lens of how you see things by saying, this is fun. What's going to happen next? A bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
So, Ben, we always love to wrap up with some fun questions. Are you ready for some rapid fun questions?
I think so.
Yeah, you think so? Okay. So what do you think about when you're alone in the car?
When I'm alone in the car, I'm usually listening to a podcast or music. So I'm actually just trying to be receptive, just being receptive to ideas.
Okay. And what's your favorite podcast?
Well, I like that How I Built This. I like the Mark Maron one. I like Pete Holmes's podcast. Yeah, a bunch of different ones.
Okay, great. If you were a superhero, what would be your superpowers?
Courage.
Courage. Oh, talk me through that one.
Well, it's just I look back, like ultimately everything we're discussing requires courage.
Yeah.
Because everyone says, I want faith. Faith is what you get at the end of a process. You don't get faith at the beginning of a process. Like, you have courage at the beginning of a process. And if it works out, you have faith. Faith is proven. It's something happens to you and then you have faith. But you start with courage. So I've been lucky that I've always had courage, so I can be in the middle of a process where I don't know the outcome and I can still enjoy it.
Oh, that's really fascinating. See, I've always looked at courage. So for me, courage is fear. So when I encounter fear, for example, I embrace it anyway, walk through it, and that's when I sort of, bump into courage. And faith for me is completely different, but I love that concept completely. All right, last question. If you were any flavor ice cream, what ice cream flavor would you be and why?
Lemon sorbet.
Okay, why?
Cleansing. Cleanses the palate.
It does cleanse the palate. Ben, I can't thank you enough for coming on the Radical Shift Summit. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I just love hearing how you speak and the way that you think. You're very, very unique.
Oh, thank you. And if people are interested, they can go to my website, which is ben-lee.com, and I have a mailing list and all kinds of projects I can fill them in on. And yeah,
that would be awesome. And we've got a page for you too, so that our viewers will be able to connect with you on the page as well. So thank you once again for your time.
Thanks, Catherine. Speak to you soon.